Welcome back to Money Law. My name's Yasha Saba, and today we're going to talk to you about what happens to your digital assets and social media assets when something happens to you. But before we begin, something to always remember, I'm a licensed attorney here in California, and a lot of what I talk about today is going to be broadly speaking for across the world, across the United States. So some of the law that I do talk about may not apply to you and might not apply to your particular situation. It is always good to ask an attorney before taking anything I say as legal advice. This is for educational purposes only. So the reason I'm bringing up this topic today on how to protect your digital assets if something happens to you is because recently in the news, we heard about two of our big YouTube stars, both big in their own right with 300,000 and 500,000 subscribers. That is a lot of people following them. They just passed away. Now what happens next for everything that they've built for their little micro empires? How are their family members gonna have to deal with this? What happens if something happens to you? So let's first start by explaining what are digital assets. All right, did you know that each one of us have had over 127 digital accounts produced in our lives? I mean, I remember, okay, maybe my bank accounts, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Snapchat, TikTok. Okay, I've got 6. Where are the rest of the 121, right? But it's true. You've signed up your email, you signed up your password, and you have created an account. That is a digital asset. Your photos online are digital assets. All of the music on your phone, all of the text messages, everything that you produce on the internet is a digital asset. And sometimes you can handle these assets in person. So for instance, with a bank account, yeah, I go online when I want a bank. I haven't been in a bank branch for maybe a few years, but I can still go into a branch and handle my accounts from there. So that might not feel as digital compared to I've opened a Dropbox account or a Google Drive and I've put thousands of photos. All my family photos are in the cloud right now. That is a digital asset because I don't have those photos physically anymore. I took them from my phone and they just went straight to the cloud. So now if something happens to me, what happens to those photos? Who can access them? These are the kind of conversations we're starting to have. And there's a new digital asset that has a lot more value, digital currency. What happens to your digital currency if something happens to you? So from a traditional standpoint, when we think of if something happens to me, here's how I want things to go, whether you're incapacitated, you're in a coma, for instance, or you pass away, then most people from pre-internet days and still today, we would create a will, we would create a trust. You have healthcare directives, you have power of attorneys. These are all a legal suite of documents that you can use to appoint who is your agent to act on your behalf. How do you want your assets to be given away or dispersed amongst your loved ones if you should pass away, right? But on the digital side of things, it is much more different. We cannot just rely on a will or a trust in order to protect your digital assets. Why is that? It's called terms of service. The terms of service agreement between all of the digital service providers that you use to house your assets, that is what governs your relationship on if something happens to you, what happens next. So for instance, when I log into Facebook, all the photos that I post on Facebook, I am beholden to Facebook's terms of service and what it says there should something happen to me and what happens to my account with Facebook. On the flip side too, with your digital currency, your Bitcoin, if you have all of your digital currency sheltered away in your Coinbase account, well, that currency that you have, yeah, it belongs to you, it's yours, but how it gets passed out of that account if something happens to you is all gonna be based on the Coinbase terms of service. Now, what if, for instance, you have digital assets that are outside of these service providers? What if all my photos are on a hard drive that is totally detached from all my computers and stuff? What if my digital currency is on a secure thumb drive, as they call like a secure vault? Well, these digital assets, the hard drive, the thumb drives, they're not controlled by anyone's terms of services. They're controlled by you. So then your will or your trust will take over those physical items. housing your digital assets from there. As you can see, it's so complicated. So let's talk about what you can do in order to protect yourself and make that easy for you. So it's been 13 years since the first iPhone came out.
It works like magic.
And look at how much our lives and our world has changed. There's a new norm. The new norm is this: we don't get a lot of mail. Our bank statements don't come in the mail anymore. It's all email or online. I don't keep photo albums anymore. My wife does, but really, majority of our photos, they're in the cloud. We have all of our family photos saved in the cloud. We have all of our comments, all of our love that we share with everybody and with the world. It's all on Facebook, it's all on Google, it's all on Amazon. It is all in the cloud. So if something happens to us, how then are we gonna protect ourselves? Well, the first thing you've gotta do, if you really care, is you've got to read your terms of services agreements. Oh, okay, I know what everyone's saying. Is that the thing where you just check the box and say accept and move on because they make it so fine print and it's so long and the lawyers, they're just going to do whatever the big tech companies want to do and nobody cares about us? Yeah, it's that thing right there, exactly. In fact, I have already read these terms of services for you, and I can give you a list of the top internet providers of service that you use, and I'm gonna tell you exactly what they say happens to your stuff if something happens to you. So let's start with Apple. The iCloud. When something happens to you, their terms of services are very clear, and there is no doubt about it. Your password and your screen name are gonna get deleted. And what happens to all the content you put into your cloud, all those photos that you've been storing over the years as you've been getting new iPhones? They're not yours anymore. They don't belong to anybody. They belong to Apple. Now, that doesn't mean Apple has a right to use them. There's other agreements that Apple has with you, such as privacy, and Apple does care a lot about privacy, as they've been clear on telling everybody in the world. But that means your family loses access to your precious photos. If you see the interest of these companies, their interest is to protect you. But you might not feel that way because you might be thinking, no, I would like my family to access my account, access my photos. I want them to use all of the photos, all those selfies I took of myself to memorialize myself, or just to have it and remember me by. That's the hardest part right here. Let's also think about Facebook. Facebook will either delete your account, or you can give Facebook what we call a legacy contact, someone who will be in charge of your account and will make the decision on whether or not to delete it or to enshrine your account so that people can use it as a way of remembering you. But not all services are like Facebook. And as you can see, Apple is on the clear other end. And it's not something bad about Apple. This is just their philosophy on how to protect your data and what makes sense to them for what comes next after you're with us. So really, what we have to think more about here is, okay, is there a way I can just handle all of this at once? Yes, there is. There are companies, startups that are in existence today. They've been around for a while and they are getting better. And they are going to each one of these individual companies, Apple, Google, Microsoft, what you name it, they're going to it, even your banks. And they're giving you the opportunity to list out all the accounts that you have that you can remember. Remember, we all have 127 digital accounts. I have no clue where half my data is. And you can tell them what you want to do with your data, and they will give you the options based on the options, the terms of services agreements that each of these tech companies have for you. So the one company that I know that I like working with is called Directive Communication Services. This is not an ad, they're not sponsored. I am an attorney and I do estate planning. This is actually my bread and butter, and I've worked with them before and they are great. They're based out of Boston. You can look them up. There are a lot of other companies just like them that you can look up to act as your digital agent. But let's say you don't want to hire them for your services. Let's say you don't have the funds or money to do with the companies. What's the next thing that you can do? Well, what you can do is you can actually write a will or create a trust, and you can write on your will or trust who your digital asset agent is, kind of like a legacy contact, like what Facebook provides. And you can give them the authorization to handle everything on your own. Now, what we talked about was just about passing away. Let's talk about if something happens to you and you haven't passed away, but you want someone kind of controlling what happens next. For instance, let's say you get in a serious accident, you're in a coma, and now your YouTube channel, if you're an influencer and you've got subscribers, is going off on its own, making revenue because there's still people watching, so there's income coming in, but now there's a lot of commentary that you can't control. Or maybe you kind of want to shut the account down temporarily until you can yourself come back up and take full control of it just because you don't trust what's going to happen, how it's being curated and whatnot. You can create a power of attorney document, and you can create kind of like a financial power of attorney, but this time for your digital assets, where you are naming someone to act as an agent on your behalf, where they can step into your shoes and go and make moves for yourself. But warning, it's not always going to work. Why? Because when those people try to go up to these tech companies to say, hey, I need access to Yasha's passwords to be able to handle his YouTube account. And he might show these power of attorney documents saying, I am the attorney in fact for Yasha Saba. Well, guess what? YouTube can always say, I'm sorry, we're not going to listen to this. This doesn't comport with our terms of services agreement, and that is what controls this account. So no. So there is a kind of little dance that you have to do. And on the legal side, you can do as much as you want, but really, if the terms of services says that no one else can access your account, no one else can have control of your account, YouTube has full control to say what it wants and how it regulates your account, then YouTube is the god of that account. There's no law that protects you there. Also, keep in mind, when you post your YouTube videos, is it your content? Does it belong to you as your digital asset? Or is it their digital asset that you've created to post on their account and they can handle it with it how they please? That is something that is also very different as you go across the stream of different platforms and where you house digital assets and content that you produce, right? So what next can you do? Well, let's talk about a little bit of the gray area, right? So most terms of services agreements says you're not allowed to share your account name and password. So don't do it. But there are some startups that are phenomenal called LastPass that allows you to share your account name and password securely without giving your password away. Technology is becoming amazing, and you can easily share these passwords with people. They download a plugin on their internet browser, and all of a sudden your screen name and password populates into that YouTube account login page, for instance, and they can log into your account and handle your affairs from there. Now, is this technically a violation of YouTube's terms of services policies? Yeah, I believe most likely is. I haven't read the YouTube terms of services, but I'm confident they have something in there saying where you agree that you're not going to share your password in it with anyone. So you might not have shared your password, but you did share in your login and credential access, even if it's through a third-party platform that's designed to keep it secure so you don't have to give passwords away. This is a big deal where it works. It helps you get what you need to get done, but it's not necessarily kosher with the platforms themselves. But are they going to notice? Are they going to shut you down? Probably not, unless it becomes a problem. And that becomes the question of, what are you allowing your digital agent to do with your password and username? Are you allowing them to just have access and keep that YouTube account going, that Instagram account going, putting up content? So if you're a social media influencer, you can keep making that revenue and keep pushing content out and keeping your followers actively engaged? Or are they just there to shut the account down, to delete it? So how you handle your affairs and how your agent, whoever you put in charge, handles your affairs is going to be a very difficult question on how the platforms are going to react by that, because it's all really subjective. It's all based on context, right? But in the reality, with our two recent passing of our YouTube stars, they were making revenue from their accounts. Is that revenue going to stop? Are those accounts now officially the property of YouTube and the family gets no revenue from all the digital content that they both made for the rest of their lives? This is a question that's up in the air. And the only thing that governs is YouTube's terms of services agreement. Unfortunately, there is no law around social media influencing right now other than disclosing if you're advertising or not, right? So that's something for all of you other influencers out there that are dedicating your life and time to building this following, this network. Keep in mind, you are building digital assets. and they are valuable. What are you going to do with them, and how are you going to protect your loved ones if something happens to you? All right, so there is a lot going on with that topic. I'm sorry if it got a little confusing. As always, just leave comments, share your questions with me. You can either subscribe to our YouTube account or follow me on LinkedIn. I'm Yasha Saba. This is Money Law. Remember, is it your money or theirs?